life that got you twisted. Things getting sideways. It's time to unfuck it. The Unfuck It Podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Unfuck It, the show where we find one thing we really all hate about the workplace and we dive in and try to see what we can do to fix it. I'm Dwayne Lay. I'm one of your hosts. My co-host over in the other chair is Crystal Lay. Good morning, Crystal. How are you?
Good morning. I am well. I'm trying to figure out where I need to sit so I'm the same height as you guys. It's not quite working.
We'll fix it in post. It's okay. We'll fix it in post. Hey, we have an AI tool, I think, that'll fix all that for us.
Excellent. AI does a lot these days.
It does.
Right?
It does probably more and at the same time less than we really need.
Excellent. I'd also like it to make my hair bigger and less frizzy. Thank you.
I will put that into the engine. Would you like to introduce our guest?
I would love to. So with us today, we have one of my favorite work authors, and not just work authors. She's now holistically authored. Can I say holistic? Is that word still okay? Yes. Her new book, The Damage of Words, must read. So love the effervescent Katrina Collier.
Thank you. Hello, both of you.
Hi,
Thank
how
you
are
so
you?
much for inviting me on. I hear I'm second, which just feels feel very honoured. It's like I have to make a good impression, which is quite worrying.
Frankly, it depends on how good you are. So
Okay.
my plan is as seasons get released, we'll put the episodes in the order of the ones we like best.
Oh, don't say
So,
that.
Under pressure.
That's a lot of pressure. Technically, you could say you are the first person that we are interviewing that is out of our group, right? Because Jenny Cody Kangas was our first interview, but she's actually part of our team. So, which is an announcement we haven't made to the world yet, but by the time this airs, we probably will have. So we'll see if this makes it into post. But so you're like our first external.
I feel special. I am Katrina Collier, which you've already said. I'm probably best known as the author of The Robot Proof Recruiter and Reboot Hiring, which is about to flash across the screen. Thank you, Dwayne. You did that beautifully. I've been in the recruitment or in around recruitment and TA for too long, since I fell into it 22 years ago. I've been in-house, I've been agency, I've been a trainer, I've been speaker, spoken on all 6 continents, which I feel quite proud of.
There's 7 continents, right?
So, yes, but you can't speak on all 7. So
if you're willing to talk to penguins, you totally could.
I'm absolutely, if somebody flies me there, I will not get a shit for 2 days because I would be sick each way. So not happening. One day I will fly there. What else do you know about me? Speaker, I've done all of that. And of course, now I am author of my memoir, The Damage of Words, which is all about overcoming my childhood trauma, which I'm sure we will allude to at some point through this brilliant conversation.
Do you feel like there's a workplace application for some of those lessons?
Yes.
Oh,
from The Damage of Words.
Well, then
oh
I can't wait.
Yes.
I can't wait to hear it all ties together.
Totally.
So one of the things that we ask all of our guests is to come loaded with a topic. What is the one thing, in your opinion, that we can dive into to try to unfuck today?
The relationship between, and I'm always talking internal, so talent acquisition and managers who are hiring for jobs.
One of the things
the power imbalance relationship crap BS that it's become.
One of the things I noticed when you were describing your background is we always talk about in-house recruiting. We never talk about out-house recruiting.
I have so regularly said I worked out-house and in-house, which as an Australian I find especially funny. But yes, no, I tend to slant it towards in-house because often staffing are a little stronger at creating that relationship, or they're working with someone in TA and they need to coach the person in TA to get better at it. So I just tend to slant that way.
Is it stronger, or is it that people tend to respect what they pay for a little bit differently, right? And while you pay for the internal resources, like obviously we do, right? It doesn't tend to hit hiring managers' budgets in the same way for most organizations. And so when they're hiring an external firm, it hits their budget line typically in a different way. And so at least when I was in executive search, I found that I didn't have to try to prove myself once we had taken on that engagement. The prove yourself was to get the engagement. And then once we delivered, that relationship was solid. I didn't have to prove myself over and over again, right? But internally, you're just there, and it's kind of You're taken for granted.
Your HR, your admin, your a cost on my spreadsheet, and it's not true, because some of the most talented recruiters I know work in house. But actually, I think you're right. I think there's not proving it, but also there are more experienced recruiters in staffing, because to cut it, you've got to be really good, right?
Right.
It's really hard to stick it in staffing and make a living from it. So they tend to be more experienced, more tenacious, possibly. But then a lot of them have moved in-house as well. So, but I think most of it is what's happened in the 2020s, which is, sorry for anyone who's heard me say this a few thousand times, but I think sometimes it's worth remembering, 2019, TA was coming into its own function. It was very proactive, relationships were strong, things were going well in the majority of companies, because I'm grossly generalizing here. But then, of course, the pandemic hits, people get fired, then they get rehired for the overhiring that happened in 2021, 22, and suddenly recruiters were unicorns and could demand huge salaries and all this kind of stuff. Then they got turfed out again, and then companies rehired cost effectively, which meant that we're now seeing a lot of very experienced, but would ask for a decent salary, not getting rehired. And that's, I think, creating even more issues, where they've just been through a roller coaster. Now, that isn't every company, of course, but this is the big problem that I see in the vast majority of ones I work with, is this, this imbalance that's being created, and some of it is by what's happened in the 2020s. And it mightn't have gone that way if we hadn't had the pandemic and all of this BS.
It occurs to me that there's this perfect storm of, we need people, right? But we need people, we want it now, right? But we're not really going to equip the teams that we need these people from with the tools they need to get them in the way to do. Like when you go to executive search, one of the reasons that I think executive search is valuable is they do what's called talent mapping, right? And so your network is your net worth, right? And so in my days in executive search, like one of the first things that we had to do was literally learn everyone in our geography that was worth knowing. And when you are an internal recruiter, like you're largely depending on inbound, right? Which is completely the opposite from executive search.
Well, some would argue that's not true, but I think more that they're given too many roles to work on and not enough time to be proactive. So I think the training bit is actually the bit that's also missing. The number of people have said to me, the robot proof recruiter is in my wish list. It's 25 quid. Is your company not prepared to buy you a book? Sorry, I'm not meant to swear. Am I allowed to swear?
Fuck yeah.
I just sit here going, what do you mean by books in your wish list? But also I would have just invested that in myself. And I think that's where, look, back when I was in agency and when I was in-house, I paid for so much stuff because I wanted to learn. So I think there's that aspect, but I do think a lot of it, and particularly now when you add in the AI, is the recruiters have got too many roles. They haven't necessarily got the leadership within TA that's strong enough to push back and create, respect and a framework and give them time to talent map and do all of these things. But there are tools to help them with that as well. But I hear them arguing to get tools and you're just going, oh my God, this is crazy. They're the people that hire the people.
Like, I'm not trying to do when I was a kid, I had to walk uphill in the snow both ways kind of a thing, but like literally.
Are you sure?
Yeah, but although I guess I'm
flipping the script there.
Right. but I'm probably about that age that I could. But literally had no tools. I had PC Recruiter and a free LinkedIn license. Like I didn't have LinkedIn Recruiter. I had LinkedIn, right? And that was it. That was all I had, right? And KBIC didn't invest in tools for us. Like that wasn't a thing. So you just had to go figure it out, right? And you did.
Yeah, but maybe they respected you. Maybe they respected you enough to not have you working on such a ridiculous volume of requirements.
Oh, no.
Because that's the other problem.
No, I mean, like if you didn't have at least 20 roles, like there was something wrong. Right. So, but it was 20 roles and not 100 roles, right? Like, so there is that. And I do understand the scale piece. But my point was, like, I think in these organizations, and particularly enterprise organizations where they have, teams of 40, 60, 80 in their TA team. Like, dude, there is not just a problem of not respecting your staff enough to resource appropriately. Like, your department is plenty big enough for however many people you have to hire, right? If you've got a team of 80 in your group, right? There's a way to divide that labor to where you can have a team whose job it is to map out the talent in your organization so that you can build proactive relationships with them. You have a company at that point that is large enough that you can provide them with resources that would make them, like candidates with resources that would make them want to listen to you. But when all you do is go to market with, I have a job, 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 there's no value in that, right?
Yeah, but we're forgetting the one that's actually causing the problem.
What if you're right?
Which is the manager. So I don't really talk enterprise. I'm much more small, medium businesses, right? Okay. So, they might have 5,000 staff, but, I leave the corpse to the corpse. I think I actually meant that the way I said it. And but they're just so big, and I just like, oh, you're like a tanker and it's just too hard to get you to change direction. So I like to work in the companies. But, there's thousands upon thousands of companies in that space. Yeah. But we're forgetting the managers. Now, I call them managers who are hiring for a role in general. I don't call them hiring managers because they're not in charge of the hiring process. Yeah. Right. But what happens is, like you're talking about once they've got the role, I'm talking about the beginning of the process, which is what I think is broken. And actually, Steve Levy talks about this a lot as well, and others, and they're all in my books. If recruiters were given the confidence and the coaching and the mentorship and all that sort of stuff that they need to spend more time at the beginning of the hiring process to get the managers to partner with them equally, then they would save so much time. So they wouldn't go to market with a generic job spec. They'd go with exactly who they need, and they'd either source or advertise, whatever. They wouldn't be chasing them all the time. I mean, they just end up wasting so much of their time chasing for interview feedback or CV or resume feedback, or, to book someone in or to whatever. There's just so much wasted time and money. And it's crazy because it could just be shift the power imbalance. But because of the 2020s or because they're thought of as a cost center or whatever, managers see them as a service. And I really hate it when I hear internal TAs say they're my client. They're not your client. They're your colleague. And they're recruiting for a role. And it doesn't matter what their job title is. You're there to partner with them to fill that role. And it's an equal partnership because you've got stuff to do and they've got stuff to do. Right. So if they won't turn up for the meeting, if they won't explain who they need to hire, if they won't let you ask all the stupid questions under the sun, you've got a problem. And then plus, I don't know how far into Reboot hiring you are, Dwayne. Did you read the bit about the poor sucker who drove 3 hours and was sitting in the lobby and the interview's cancelled? Yeah. Like the recruiters should be able to stop that happening, put in place well, what happens if you're sick? What happens if you get hit by a bus tomorrow here in London? What are you going to do? It's like there's contingency plans and all this kind of stuff. But it's just seen as, oh, well, they're just working on a job requirement. No, they're not. But then I do also think that talent acquisition are not very good at explaining what they do. I always joke that, I'm in my 50s, let's just go with that. I don't know what HR does. To this day, I still, even though I've got many friends that work in HR, I don't really know what they do. Personnel's been around since the 60s and I still don't really know what they do. So can you imagine you ask a manager, what does talent acquisition do? And they go, I don't know, advertise a job, go through job application.
They acquire talent. See, it's right there in the name.
Yeah, but what does that mean?
Yeah.
And that's the problem. They don't understand the wooing and the engaging and the keeping people in process and the chasing and the BS and emotions and blah, 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 blah. I'll stop there and let you get a question in.
Well, no, I think it's a really good way of looking at it. Like they don't understand what's happening. And I would suspect, having been in that role as the hiring manager, there's also I know my team and my people. Sorry, the manager hiring someone. I know my people and I know my process better than you do. Like, I don't need to follow your rules. I need you to do mine, right? And so when you talk about the imbalance there, how much of that do you think comes from just a lack of knowledge and a lack of respect for what TA does?
All of it. All of it. I mean, and the thing is, they're shooting themselves in the foot. They don't realize that they are. Like, it's like if you spend an hour with me at the beginning of the process and we really chat about this role and everything around it, I can save you hours and hours interviewing people who aren't suitable. But you will have these managers who go, oh no, I've been recruiting for 30 years. Or, you know, I've written it on the job description. And I always laugh about I've been recruiting for 30 years. No, you've been interviewing from a qualified list of applicants for 30 years. That is not recruiting.
Feels like in 30 years you should have filled that role, right? You've been doing this for 30 years? How important could it be?
Could have done it. But yeah, I genuinely think that. And I just think and it's a catch-22, because if the recruiters won't have that confidence to stand up and say, this is what I do. Like, it's not just finding someone that matches some job description you've probably pulled out of the bottom drawer at some point, or worse, made with AI. There's so much more to it. And if they don't get an opportunity to explain what they're going to go and do, and then what they need the manager to do and create an agreement, then it's like, it's not going to go to plan. And then they just think the recruiter's shit, because it always comes back on TA. It's always their fault. But it's not, because there's two people.
Yeah, and that for that scenario to work the way that it's supposed to work, above both of them is hello,
What's up, dog?
And then who goes away?
There's leadership that needs to step in, right? Like, so really, you know, I listen to all of this and I'm like, and there's a C-suite conversation that needs to happen of, let's explain what this function does. So when someone tells me I don't understand what HR does, which is a fairly common thing, like that's a common issue. You know, my response is always, well, it's part of that is because it's different in every organization. Like, there's no universal standard for HR or TA. And so you can work in one organization and it may function one way and very different in another. So for every organization, I think there's almost like a health check on an annual or every other annual basis, you know, every other year basis of, this is what the people function in our organization is set to deliver. And here's how you partner with them as
to do it,
an executive, as a manager, as an individual contributor, you know, and people function. Here's how you interface with them. And that thing has to be done together, right? Like, so everybody can hear it together, you know, hey, manager, the TA team within the people function, they are your experts on sourcing, finding, wooing,
engaging, wooing, keeping them in the process, chasing you,
all of the things until they step into our company on day one. They are the experts on this person. That doesn't mean they ultimately get to select them, but you need to trust their process, because they're going to make your life easier so you can continue to work and do the things that we hired you to do while all of this is going on, right?
Yeah. And so there's a couple of things I think on that, and totally in agreement. At a couple of events lately, I've been doing this, which is, it's good because it's physically in the body. They feel it. So I get them to stand up if their company has a sales function or a marketing function. So everyone stands up, right? And I'm like, do they ring a bell? Do you stay standing if everyone gets praise when they do a deal and they all stay standing? Right. Now, stay standing if talent acquisition is recognized for hiring that salesperson or marketer. Vroom. The vast majority sit down. The only person that stayed standing here, when I did it here in London, worked at McLaren Racing. So, of course, they get that the people that hire the people make the difference. And for some reason, the people that hire the people are the most underfunded, underappreciated people. But then it's also on the flip side, you need talent acquisition to be mapping. And like, I hired Dwayne and he's done this. I hired Crystal, she's done this. And to really keep track of who they've hired and how well they're doing so they can also blow their own trumpet. So it's like it needs to come both ways. I shouldn't do it like that, should it? Shouldn't, but it is C-suite down and TA up, but sadly. But it shouldn't be. It should be sideways. TA should be up there.
That quality of hire metric is really important. And there's a precursor to it.
But that's not on TA.
It should be. It should be, though. Like
it should be on both. It can't just be on one.
No. It can't solely be on TA because there's way too many contributing factors to quality of hire. But there's two pieces to it, right? So it's kind of funny. I just put out my my wind up to RecFest USA, which is next week. Will be done by the time this goes to air. But one of the talks is going to be given by Melissa Thompson on what's new for Ford, quality of slate, right? And so that's not a new metric. It's been around. Like, I was teaching teams about that in 2014, and ERE, published about it in 2013, so not a new thing. But quality of slate is a precursor to quality of hire, right? And so TA owns quality of slate, right? Like for sure, that is a TA metric. Quality of hire.
So this is the quality of who they present, or
yes, the quality of the candidates that presented, right? And so quality of hire would be owned jointly, right? Because once they get in the door, once they're hired, there's so many contributing factors on whether or not they stay. But what is not necessarily, I shouldn't say it's not. What is somewhat still dependent on TA, though, is how capable were they of performing? So how well did you actually assess them in that front end process? Were they able to do the job? Like, not could they, like, did they have the all of the
like
tools
support.
and things, support, but were they actually able to do the job? Like, did they have the qualifications and the things that you said they had when you slated them? Right?
So I think the issue then comes in. So again, I don't think it should all fall on TA. Again, I have no idea if you've read Reboot Hiring, but there's the bit in there about the managers lying in interviews, and then people start and they're immediately leaving. So that's the other. So it could help you catch that out. So actually, it's a good thing to have,
absolutely.
because they do lie, which is kind of crazy. But it's like then, okay, so say you start working out as a TA professional that you do have an issue with a manager, you are providing a good slate, and then they're burning them in interview or whatever, then they don't often have support. So it's like, does Great at HR then step into support to train that manager? We had the problem here where 82% of managers are accidental. So they get promoted and they're not trained in leadership development. I think the stat's more like 70 in the US. It's lower, but it's another problem. But then it's sometimes they don't have anyone to go to.
Yeah. And they get promoted.
They might have that great HR.
And they get promoted into those because they were really great as an individual contributor.
Engineer.
Not because they were really good at managing people, but you did that job great. Let's put you in a very different role. Let's have Picasso run the paint store and see how that turns out.
You know who does a really
with
great
no support
job of like pulling that into like recognizing, oh, you did a great job at your job, we're going to make you a manager, but then supporting them is Textron. So Textron, which has Bell Helicopter and a bunch of other companies, they do a fabulous job of then turning those individual contributors turned managers into leaders. They pour a ton of money into making them good managers.
What did you say they do?
They do a lot of different things. Textron is a larger conglomerate, but Bell Helicopter is the subsidiary that I'm most familiar with. And when they're
as in helicopters in the sky.
Yeah, helicopters.
So it's quite important then. But I think when you get into a software company or something, they don't think it's as important.
Yeah,
whereas you're like, hello, keeping people alive by keeping the helicopters in the sky or safely back on the ground. You know what I mean? Yes,
there is that. But the principle I think behind it holds. And what I thought was cool about Textron is they don't just do it for the engineering group. Like they do it across their ecosystem because they understand like it impacts their bottom line. And that's true for every organization, right? Like so the money you invest back into your people helps them not only do a better job in their job, but everyone else too. And when they don't do that, it kind of leads into your new book, right? The damage of words. Like
damage of words.
When you don't know what you're doing and you are out of your depth, like you see all of your toxic traits rise up to the surface. And so when managers are overworked, out of their depth, they don't understand what they're doing, you see poor interview quality.
Scared to lose their job.
You see worsening relationships with TA. It's harder to make a decision. So all of a sudden you're slating 30 candidates when maybe 3 were only needed. The average, I was reading today, the average number of applications globally was 183 to one position.
Yeah.
Right? So,
is that inbound or outbound?
It's just
it's from advertising.
So
I think it's shit out there at the moment.
Yeah. So 183 applications per, I'm sure it's inbound, but it didn't specify, applications to one position. So think of going through 183 candidates. And what that tells me is like, hiring is definitely broken, but also there's a lot of managers that can't make decisions.
Yeah.
And
but I also think sometimes I think sometimes in the US you actually have to advertise the role depending on what industry you're in. But I do see stuff that really ultimately pees me off, actually. There's someone who's looking for they're looking for a TA person. They are a head of TA. And they were going on about the fact they got 1,000 applications and that they were going to go through every single one. And it was just like, I'm sorry, but you could have just gone out to market and sourced someone and not put 1,000 people, their expectations, their hopes up to then reject them, because it's really brutal in TA at the moment, because of the technology as well as what's happened in the 2020s and the ageism and all that kind of stuff.
Well, it's also
and it was just like, you did not need to do that. And then you didn't need to write a post about, oh, woe is me, I got 1,000 applications.
Yeah,
and it was just
anytime
like,
that I see that.
people's lives.
Yeah, anytime that I see someone say, like, I got 1,000 applications, or, we had 4,000 people apply. And like, you have the most generic job ad, right? Like, you shouldn't have that many. I was mad when we had 100 interns apply. Like, that, I get it. Like, the intern market just cratered this year in the States.
But so is the TA market, so I'm not surprised.
So you're going to see a greater number of applications, right? But the point is that you need to make your ad, your advertisement, your posting, whatever, specific, right? Like, it should be very specific. And not just in the job, right? Because a lot of people will be qualified to do the job, but you need to then start getting into the blueprint of, these are our organizational values. Here are the individual values that will be able to be serviced in our organization, like getting into PE Fit, some of that stuff. It will not stop desperate people from applying. And there are a lot of people who are justifiably desperate.
That's
right?
the bit you're missing, because I think at the moment that people are just applying. So, but also you're getting the using AI tools to apply. And they're also using ChatGPT to make their CVs or resumes better for each role, which means they all end up looking the same as well. So it's I think that's where, so what you're saying is like an ideal world, but I think they should take the amazing job description and potentially, if they know they're going to get an influx, rather than get 1,000 people's hopes up, just go out to market and find somebody quietly. And not do that. I know it's not right because people will say, oh, blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, oh, my God.
Well, you can't always do that, right? So, like, it sort of depends on the organization.
I hate this person. I mean, they work in talent position. They should be able to find somebody.
Yeah, but depending on the organization, they may have to publicly post it. Like, I know here,
Not this particular one.
Well, okay, like that, maybe not that particular one, but as far as like in a broad spread, I know that there's your government contractors, public companies, those kind of things. You have to post it. So you're right on all of your things in terms of AI and desperation. Like, it's not going to stop those things, but there are still just most job postings, most advertisements are so
they're very vanilla,
generic that it's going to.
But do you know what also happens? So I did a workshop with a company here, and the main part of the company comes from the US. Mm-hmm. So they are told, oh, well, you must put this and you must put that. And actually you don't need to do that here in the UK. And actually we would much rather it start up with the role and something really interesting, not the boring company stuff. So you end up with all of these that are all the same format. And they're not interesting, and they're not allowed to add this and they're allowed to do that because it's in the US. They're not allowed. And it's like, but you're recruiting in the UK or in Germany or in Italy or whatever, and that's also frustrating.
Yeah, there's not one specific way it has to be done in the US anyway. Like,
well, that's what they say, because then it's the lawyers get involved or greater HR gets involved.
Things that they want in there, but it doesn't have to be in a specific order. And with most of our clients,
it doesn't have to be a job description. It just has to be a job advertisement. That's another whole conversation that I didn't want to go into. I wanted to go into the people bit, because the people bit.
So if you're a recruiter, right, or a talent acquisition professional, and you get a manager who is hiring. See, I learned. How do you push back effectively? I mean, we've talked about the lack of respect for the role. So how do you push back effectively and say, hey, this thing you're giving me to work with, this ain't it. We're going to get 1,000 people. We want one. We want one application, ideally. How do you effectively push back on that?
Well, I'm always of the belief, first off, you have a meeting with them. And if they're not, and I'm not talking high volume right? I'm not talking, somebody was doing like university recruiting. I don't understand that. I'm talking your regular recruiting, okay, that is not high volume so much. But you have a meeting with your manager on every single role, and you have that meeting. If they're not prepared to have that meeting, you don't work on the role. And the best way to get their attention is to close the role on the applicant tracking system. And once you do that, you will suddenly have their attention. So, I mean, that's part of it. But obviously you need a TA head, director, whatever they're called, to have your back, to say, yes, I understand why that meeting is so incredibly important. It impacts everything, employer brand, candidate experience, the time it's going to take, the cost to the bottom line, all that kind of stuff. So that to me is like, you start there. When you have that meeting, you hit them with one of Steve Levy's great questions, like how will you know at the end of 12 months you're going to have hired the right person? You literally start with a question before they have a time to argue. And they go, and they'll start rattling off all the stuff that they need to have completed in 12 months. And suddenly you've got a proper job description. You're already having the conversation. So you don't ask permission. You just launch in with a great question, get them thinking you've got them. You know, you've immediately got their respect. So there's sort of that side. And then it's obviously making sure that you cover off all the communication and the partnering side. And then as far as, you know, if they really are doing that thing where they're like being all egotistical and like, you know, I've been recruiting for years. It's like, oh, I just wanted to save you time and money. And they'll be like, huh? Well, yeah. And I mean, Bob's learnt, you know, refer to another manager they know, to spend time with me. And what they've found is they've saved hours from interviewing. Oh, what do you mean? And it's just, but it's calm, confident tone. And knowing that it's really probably coming, as Krista was saying earlier, from the fact that, you know, they also are doing more with less and overwhelmed and maybe not knowing what they're doing and trying to wing it. So it's just a case of trying to stay neutral. Yeah. But just know that if you can get them to see that it's in their benefit to give you time at the beginning of the process and to answer your questions and to, you know, therefore spend less time interviewing, that is also to your benefit, but you make it all about them. So it's that. But I think this is where I get so frustrated because I'm seeing, I mean, let's be honest, it's ageism. Let's not call it anything else. Cost, their salaries are higher, so therefore they're not getting recruited into heads of and director of TA roles in a lot of companies. So you're losing that knowledge transfer. This is not happening in the company I'm talking about that I did the workshop at, but the head of TA, actually, he's in the US and he came over and he said, when I have a manager who can't decide about a person, I ask them this question. I ask them, how would they feel if this person turns up at another company? And I just went, oh my God, that is the best question. I've never heard that in 22 years. But the knowledge transfer from his experience for having done this for a few decades, from having all of that, because he was in the room with the rest of the team, he shared it. And then they've got this great question. What a brilliant question. How will you feel if they turn up at the competitor? And it was like, wow, I think we're losing that. So we're losing it from there's ageism going on in TA. There's a reluctance to invest in training and workshops. Hey, they can't even buy my book. There's loads of questions in there from amazing recruiters all around the world.
Is that this like, book? Is that the one we're talking about?
No. Well, for that's for managers and leaders. I mean, that I keep saying to recruiters, buy it and put it on your leadership's table. Don't even say a word. Just stick it on their desk. I've made the case.
People
for
love
you.
getting homework. People love getting homework.
But it's like it's bright yellow and it says save money. They're going to pick the bloody thing up. Like, that's why I did it that colour. Just stick it on their desk. And even that doesn't work sometimes. You're just like,
we
I haven't got the money.
To all of our clients' TA teams, not this past Christmas, the Christmas before. They're like, this is a gift for you to give to someone else.
Give to your leaders. Stick it on their bloody desk. I've made the case for you. And again, I've pulled in all these voices. I always pull in recruiters from all around the world. So yeah. Or if it's for you, buy the Robot Proof Recruiter. It doesn't talk about AI and it does talk about Twitter, sadly. But, you know, at some point I might update it to an edition 3. You never know.
Do you think AI will stick around? Do you think that's a thing we're going to get for a while?
Maybe. How long's it been around? About 15 years or something?
I remember watching The Terminator when I was a kid. Like, we've been talking for a while.
Since the 80s.
Yeah, you know, it's funny.
We are sounding old.
No, it's really funny. I was in a webinar Monday last week, and somebody was talking about, like, you know, AI is new, and I'm like, it's really not. And Christopher was like, yeah, that was my major in college back in the 80s or 90s, whatever it was.
I think the Perceptron was built in the 60s. Like, that was the first one. So it's been around. Yeah. Been around, just in advance for a long time.
I mean, I do have in the 80s. I don't want her to kill me. So sorry, But there was AI majors in the 80s. That's what she was saying. So
I think I have my concerns about where it's being used in the hiring process, and that won't go away.
yeah.
And it's just that, like, even earlier when you mentioned someone's name and I just assumed it was a male, it was like, oh, you know, in my generation and older, we've put people in roles based on gender. And so all the data is quite biased. So I have concerns. And some of that's coming out now. We're all sitting with popcorn, aren't we, as some of these court cases are happening.
Oh,
There are a lot of good concerns to have over it, but that is another show.
Yeah.
yeah.
That is, sorry?
That's another show.
Yeah, definitely.
You only pick one thing. I told you.
Okay, yeah, that's right. Oh, sorry. Yes. Damn it.
So if you were going to summarize your advice to the TA squads that are out there dealing with these managers who are of higher, I don't quite have that phrasing done. I'll work on that.
Okay.
What would be like your big advice for them to take away from this?
If you are scared to push back on your managers, if you are people pleasing, if you're a perfectionist, if you just don't feel worthy of it, if you think that they're so incredibly special, you have work to do. You have work to do. Like, it starts with you. And I learned that by healing my crap. And it's just, you have to. The HR tech vendors are extremely loud, and they are convincing leaders that your job, particularly if you add like an admin function, you can be displaced out of it, not replaced, displaced. So it's like, the more you act like an admin person, the more you're likely to get replaced. The more you start pushing back and creating great partnerships, the more you're likely to stay in a job. So really, it comes down to that, but you've got to sort your stuff out, because people aren't born as people pleasers and perfectionists. They're created.
Oh,
and you just cannot be that in TA.
I like that. Well, I think that brings us to kind of our one final segment. If we have two, this would be the second, I guess, which is the go unfuck yourself segment. And I think you kind of started going down that road. So
and then I realized you hadn't asked me the question.
I hadn't yet, but you saw it coming. Kids, that's what good prep will do for you. So tell us a little bit, how did you go unfuck yourself when it came to these issues? Is there a book that you either read or wrote on this? Oh, there's one you wrote a book on this topic. Okay. Tell us about it.
Can I just say how cute was I at 3
Adorable.
before I knew any of it was about to
Don't say it in
happen?
past tense.
This is pre.
Continue to be.
This is pre the abuse. I had nothing but problems with, I was a perfectionist. I was extremely defensive. I was, just a nightmare to work with. I was so hostile. And I had to do everything to such a high standard, and then nobody ever did it to that standard. And then I'd get in trouble, and I was always scared of being in trouble. And it was just, oh my God. But I'd been on a contract, and I lost the contract because yet again, I had another narcissistic boss. And I went to see a coach about my career because I didn't know what direction I wanted to go in. And we're babbling on, and she just went, hang on a minute, let's just go back over there. And she was the one that provided the mirror. And she was the one that started digging into my childhood and said, what happened? And she was the one that made me understand, I've got a narcissistic mother. I'd had emotional and physical abuse. I didn't even know it was emotional and physical abuse. And I didn't understand the patterns of behavior that I was playing because of this incredible core wound that I'd had. But all of my work behaviors were just like my personal behaviors, and they'd all come from childhood trauma. So it's just a case of, and I always go back to the people pleasing and the perfectionism. But there's loads, obsessional thinking, workaholics. People that need to continually study because they don't feel they're good enough, so they keep studying. All of these things show that there's a self-worth issue, or there's a shame issue, there's a core wound. And it's just a case of like being prepared to go, something's not quite right here, and doing something about it. When I went to see Michelle Zelly, I did not know I could change. I thought I was just going about my career. And then she opened my eyes up to, well, if we heal this, you're going to change. And oh my gosh, I look back now and I'm just like, I'm such a different person. And I wouldn't dream of being defensive now. Like, people can say what they want, I'm like, take it on or not. And, it's just, I'm so different. I'm so relaxed. I'm emotionally regulated. And I'm creating a career that I love.
That's going to feel great.
Yeah. So it's why I talk about it so much, because I want people to heal their crap. And we've all got wounds. We've all got stuff. It might have even happened in childhood. It could have happened just through bullying at work. That happens.
Oh my gosh.
But just heal.
Yeah. When we were prepping for the show, I was like, I hope we get to talk about this because I think through my life, like my own life.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, stuff happened when I was a kid. And it's funny. I was talking to, I think it was a therapist. I don't even remember who it was, but they said something about like, oh yeah, your childhood trauma. And I was like your childhood was really traumatic and chaotic. And I was like, was it? I don't think about it in those terms because it's my childhood, right? So it's just childhood, right? And so they were like, well, I mean, you're adopted, you had your primary caregiver die, like all of these things, right? And I was like, oh, well, I mean, I guess when you talk about it like that, but I was really little. I'm like, yeah, but you still experience those things. Oh, yeah, okay. So, stuff in childhood. I'm like, okay, whatever. Yeah, there's probably some stuff there I need to work on. But the stuff that I remember is all stuff that happened at work, right?
Yeah. That is the hyper independence that comes from things like being abandoned, because when someone dies on you, that's what's happened. Or in my case, not having significant adults to depend on, and you become hyper independent.
Sure.
And it's like one of the signs that you got shit to heal. We've all seen the meme of the woman carrying the sofa chair out of the tube in London. Like, that'd be me. I would not ask anyone for help. I would drag that fucker up the stairs. And it's like, that's not normal.
Right.
And then you start going, okay, but you have to be ready. And it took me to 40. Like, I mean, again, I think the universe meant, Katrina, you are going to get help, and threw me into it. I didn't know. But again, a reason I wrote The Damage of Words is, please go sort your stuff. But why was I going to say that? It's just how life transforming it is when you find the right someone to mirror back to you and start to help you change it.
And that helped me. I said, God gave me Dwayne, and that helped me. I'm not sure it helped him.
Oh, I assumed I was given to you as a punishment. That's good.
Oh, no, I think I was giving you a punishment.
God,
but either way, I was like thinking about some of the stuff at work, and I was like, yeah, some of the like the most damaging things that I know changed the way that I interact with people or stopped interacting with people, like things that it took me a really long time to go like, yeah, I stopped doing this because this one person made this comment online, or this one person told me I couldn't do this thing, so I believed it because they were, higher up than me. So surely they knew, right? And it took me a long time to realize that they didn't know anything more than I did, right? And going through,
and they probably had their own stuff.
Yeah.
So with the rise of so much hatred, right? There's so much hatred and division, and whether that's at work or just globally, it's projected self-hate. So that person makes that comment to tear you down subconsciously. And I sure as hell did this when I was full of self-hate. Subconsciously, I would tear other people down to make myself feel better. Yeah. And I mean, I would say it, but it would be subconscious. I wasn't in control. I wasn't aware of what I was doing. And they may have done that to make you feel less than, that you never know what they're projecting onto you. And I think that's the joy of, healing or working with a coach or a mentor that you can have that conversation. They go, oh, that sounds like they've got an issue. Or what do you mean? And you start to understand what's yours and what's not. But there is also the thing, Crystal, that we get where we attract a scenario to us because we need to heal. And I think, I had my narcissistic mother and then abusive boyfriends and then so many narcissistic bosses and flatmates and you name it. Like they kept coming until I finally found the self-love and the self-worth and learned how to do proper boundaries, which, anyone in TA needs to learn how to do. And until I got to that point, and when I was like, now I can spot them a mile off. I'm like,
yeah, what's that saying? Damaged people attract damaged people. Yeah. And I think there's something to, especially with narcissism, which is really rare. So like, let's be really clear. True narcissism is really, really rare. Like 2% of now some of that is,
I know that's what they say, but I actually think it's higher than that, but not as high as we keep calling people narcs who are not narcs.
Yeah, you have to separate narcissistic traits from true narcissism, right? And so there's a lot of people with narcissistic traits, and you can have a myriad of personality disorders that will have narcissistic traits attached to them.
Yeah.
And so like it can functionally feel like narcissism, right? But true narcissism is rare. And I'm very sorry that you had to live with that.
Loads of times.
Yeah, but the reason I say that is because like you may have someone with bipolar disorder or someone with autism who has problems with perspective taking that could feel narcissistic, but they're not narcissistic. How you deal with it may be very much the same as how you would deal with narcissism. So it's less the label and more the behaviors, right?
To me, the real one with narcissism is the complete incapacity to see that they are at fault. So, for example, on my birthday, when my memoir was published, my mother randomly went to my Facebook. Now, I've been talking about my memoir coming for about 18 months. So why she suddenly did it on my birthday, the day it was published, I'll never know. And she then got in touch with my older siblings and said, was I a bad mother? And then she, to my sister, to her face, said, well, I know I hit you and your brother, but Katrina didn't get much. And I'm like, it's called the damage of words for starters. But it was like this, well, I hurt you, but she didn't get much. It's like, you nearly killed me when I was 3 years old. What are you talking about? And she knows that because she told me. And it's just like this, but she doesn't accept that she is responsible. She doesn't accept that she's at fault at any point. And in fact, she was like cut off from her own parents. And then practically all the kids have cut off from her except my oldest brother at some point. And you're like, but no, you can't see you're the center of it. You can't.
Well, yeah, I mean, they
just genuinely cannot see your point of view. And I think that's the big one that makes it.
It's the self-protection from the narcissistic injury, right? So at the point that they had the psychological injury that caused the narcissism to begin with, like they stopped being able to see other perspectives. Like, oh no, I'm not asking, I'm telling. But they just
I'm just like, I'm genuinely like, I know the things that went down in my mum's life, and I don't know whether she became a narcissist or she was always one. I don't know.
Generally speaking, it's something that happens to you as opposed to being born that way. But either way, like when that happens in your world, when you're confronted with that at work, when you have someone that's just genuinely unable to see any perspective other than their own, that can't take accountability for anything that they do, like there's a piece of having to recognize and step back and say like, okay, where do I spend my time and my energy? I'm never going to be enough for this person. So how do I be enough in my job or for the organization or for myself, right?
No, like, yourself. It has to start with you.
Yeah. And so like for me, I've worked with people with narcissistic traits. I've not worked for a narcissist. But I will never forget when I was running HR, the guy that I worked for, like he was a nice enough guy, but he had some narcissistic traits. And one of them was not being able to see anyone else's reality but his own. And so we had spent all of this money on making everyone feel comfortable that they weren't going to be laid off. Of course, they were going to be laid off. I worked for a home builder during the collapse of the real estate market in the US.
Oh, cool.
And so he came back in and we were walking after we had brought everyone together and we're like, you're safe and here's a barbecue and it's all good and we're sorry and all the things.
And we'll fire you tomorrow.
Right. And
Pink slips under the top bun.
So we're walking back. We're walking
as you leave with your drink.
To the office after the barbecue. Everyone had gone back to their desk, and he's like, employees are kind of like cars, and sometimes cars malfunction, and you take them to the shop and you spend some money on it, like we kind of did with this lunch. But if people grouse and they're getting upset, it's kind of like when your car acts up. You just get rid of the car. And I was like, you just undid everything we just did. Like, do you understand? Yeah. Like, as you're loudly walking through all of the departments saying this that are not that far apart from each other, what you just did. And he's like, who cares? Like, we can get more tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like, they care, dude. Like,
and I think there's also the, this one, I've had that as well, like the lack of any self-awareness. But the one I had was, she basically turned the entire floor of people against me. She was, because I could see straight through her. And I knew that she was a liar and I knew she was gaslighting and I knew that that was all a facade. And once you see through a narcissist, it's a very lonely place to be. And she would, and I think it's like a malignant narcissist is the one that does that. And she would literally, and years later, I've chatted with people and they're like, no, we were aware it wasn't as bad as you thought. But in the moment, and what you want to do as a human being, you either want to argue with them and give them, no, that's not right. This isn't what's happening, and give them your energy, or you try and buy into that. Like you try and go along with it to get your way, and neither one works. All you can do is it grey stone, grey wall, whatever it's called. Just give them one word answers.
Yeah, grey rock.
But grey rock. And keep notes. Like if you're in a workplace, keep notes and facts and emails and proof of what's happening. And that's the only thing you can do. There is absolutely no point arguing your case. You've got to let them tie their own noose, because it's just the worst. But there will be people coming up against that. And it's, yeah.
Well, Katrina, this has been a fantastic conversation, as it always is with you. So for the folks who somehow haven't met you or seen you or talked to you or read your work, where can everybody find you?
Google me.
Okay, that's an easy one. That makes it easy.
Like the first 20 pages. Obviously, I mean, LinkedIn, I have a website, Amazon, if you wish to be inspired. Can I just say the damage of words is actually my healing journey. I don't sit and just wallow in self-pity about my childhood. In fact, there's only really one chapter and a bit on about that. So it's more about all the weird, wacky, and wonderful stuff I've thrown at healing.
I actually thought it was a great book to read. I think I read it on a weekend when it was a little rainy. So grab a cup of tea, grab the book, grab a blanket.
It's a fast read, isn't it?
It really was. It was
at a pace. Yeah. It was really weird sitting and reading because it takes so long to get something published. And then when I did, I was sitting reading it going, oh, this is really fast. It was weird. It just has this energy to it. Yeah. But I think there are people who will trigger when they read it. And I've written it from the healed heart. So if you trigger, that's a clue to you that you have some stuff to work on. So if you feel really upset for me, if you're crying, you've got stuff to work on. It's a gift that you've been given. So don't worry about me. I'm cool. Sorted it.
That's great sentiment.
Well, I'm still insane, but other than that, no.
You be cool and insane at the same time. Perfectly fine.
Alice in Wonderland, where something we're all a little mad here.
We're all a little nuts, but happy nuts.
The best kind. All right. So Katrina, thank you so much for joining us. Look forward to talking to you again soon. Hopefully one of us will cross the pond, or two of us will cross the pond, and we'll be able to pop out to the pub, have a drink, and chat over some of this stuff.
Love it.
All right. Cheers.
It's time to fuck it. Thanks for tuning in, friends. Until next time, keep it real and unfuck it.